I never imagined I'd be burying my father on a Tuesday in October while my husband stood 3 feet away from me, plotting his escape. My name is Claire Donovan, and I'm 42 years old. I've lived in Charleston, South Carolina, for most of my adult life, married to a man I thought I knew. But standing there in that funeral home, watching the mahogany casket that held my father's body, I realized I'd been living with a stranger for 16 years. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching this from. Because what I'm about to tell you, this story of betrayal, loss, and the revenge that changed everything, it needs witnesses. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever trusted someone who made you feel like a fool, then you need to hear how this ends. Hit that subscribe button, because the stories in my description box will make you feel less alone. I promise you that. My father, William Hartford, died of a sudden heart attack at 73. He was a retired Navy officer, the kind of man who ironed his jeans and never missed a Sunday service at St. Michael's Episcopal Church. He raised me and my younger brother, Marcus, after our mother died when I was 12. Dad was my anchor, my compass, the voice in my head that told me I was stronger than I thought. The viewing was scheduled for 2 o'clock. I'd spent the morning at the funeral home with Marcus, going over final arrangements, choosing hymns, writing an obituary that could never capture who Dad really was. My husband, Derek, said he had to work that morning. He was a regional manager for a commercial real estate firm, always on calls, always busy. I didn't question it. I'd stopped questioning a lot of things by then. When Derek finally arrived at the funeral home, he was wearing the navy suit I'd picked out for him 3 years ago. His sandy brown hair was perfectly styled, his jaw freshly shaved. He looked like he was going to a business meeting, not saying goodbye to the man who'd welcomed him into our family with open arms, who'd taught him how to sail, who'd called him son. He kissed my cheek, a cold, obligatory gesture, and immediately pulled out his phone. I watched him type something, his thumbs moving fast, a slight smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Then he looked up at me with those blue eyes that used to make me feel safe, and he said he needed to step outside to take a call. I nodded. I was numb. Grief has a way of putting you in a fog where nothing feels entirely real. The funeral home was filled with Dad's friends, his Navy buddies, his church congregation, neighbors from the historic district where he'd lived for 40 years. They came up to me one by one, squeezing my hands, telling me stories about William Hartford that made me smile through tears. Mrs. Pemberton from Dad's book club said he'd been reading Hemingway the morning he died. Mr. Chin from the hardware store said Dad had placed an order for paint just 2 days before, planning to repaint his den. My father had been making plans. He thought he had time. Derek came back inside, just as the service was about to start. He sat beside me in the front row, but there was a distance between us that felt like miles. His leg bounced slightly. Nerves, I thought. Or impatience. The service was beautiful. Pastor Mitchell spoke about Dad's faith, his service to his country, his devotion to family. Marcus gave a eulogy that broke everyone's hearts, including mine. I couldn't speak. I tried to write something, but every time I sat down with pen and paper, the words wouldn't come. How do you sum up a man who'd been everything to you? After the service, as people filed past the casket to pay their respects, I stood there receiving condolences. That's when I noticed Derek wasn't beside me anymore. I scanned the room and found him near the back, talking to someone. Her. I'd seen her before, though I couldn't immediately place where. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s, with long dark hair and a black dress that seemed a little too fashionable for a funeral. She was crying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, and Derek had his hand on her shoulder in a gesture that looked far too intimate for a casual acquaintance. Something cold slithered down my spine. Before I could process what I was seeing, Derek's cousin, Patricia, approached me. Patricia was one of those women who always knew everyone's business, who thrived on gossip but disguised it as concern. She leaned in close, her perfume overwhelming, and whispered, "Claire, honey, I'm so sorry about your father. He was a wonderful man." Then she paused, and her eyes shifted toward Derek and the woman in the back. I didn't realize Derek had invited friends. The way she said friends made my stomach turn. "Who is she?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Patricia's expression shifted to something that looked like pity. "You don't know? That's Rebecca Sinclair. She works at Derek's office." I thought, Well, I assumed you knew she'd be here. I didn't know. Derek hadn't mentioned inviting anyone from work to my father's funeral. I watched as Derek leaned down and said something to Rebecca. She nodded, wiping her eyes again, and then Derek turned and started making his way through the small groups of people gathered in the parlor. He was shaking hands, hugging relatives, playing the role of the grieving son-in-law. But as he moved through the crowd, I heard fragments of conversation that made my blood run cold. Derek stopped next to his brother, Justin, and Justin's wife, Amanda. I was standing about 10 feet away, accepting condolences from Dad's sailing friend, Captain Morrison, when I heard Derek's voice, low but not quite low enough. "This is it, man. I'm finally doing it. I can't keep living this lie." Justin looked uncomfortable. "Derek, maybe now isn't." "I'm serious," Derek interrupted. "I found real love, Justin. The kind I should have had all along. I'm leaving. After today, I'm done." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt Captain Morrison's hand on my arm, steadying me, his weathered face creasing with concern. But I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look away from Derek. My husband was announcing his departure at my father's funeral. He was telling his family that he'd found someone else, that he was leaving me, on the day I buried the most important man in my life. Amanda, Justin's wife, glanced in my direction, her face pale. She'd seen me listening. But Derek didn't notice. He was too busy unburdening himself, too busy planning his freedom. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to collapse on the floor and let the grief and rage consume me. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I walked over to them. Derek turned, and for just a second, I saw fear flash across his face. He'd realized I'd heard, but then his expression hardened into something almost defiant, like he was daring me to make a scene in front of everyone. "Claire," he said, his voice carefully neutral. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. This man who'd shared my bed for 16 years, who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, who'd stood beside me through my mother's death, and now my father's, was a stranger. "If you want to leave," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands, "then do what makes you happy, Derek." His eyes widened slightly. He'd expected anger, tears, pleading. Not permission. Justin and Amanda stood frozen, clearly uncomfortable. Other relatives nearby had stopped their conversations, sensing the tension. Derek cleared his throat. "Claire, we can talk about this later." "No," I cut him off. "We don't need to talk. You've made yourself clear. You've found real love. You're done. I heard you. So go. Do what makes you happy." I turned away from him and walked back toward the casket, toward my father, toward the only person in that room who'd never betrayed me. And even though he was gone, even though I was alone in a way I'd never been before, I felt something ignite inside me. Derek thought he'd won. He thought he'd get to walk away clean, to start his new life with Rebecca Sinclair while I picked up the pieces. But he didn't know what I knew. He didn't know what I discovered 3 weeks ago, before my father died, when I'd found the emails, the bank statements, the truth about who my husband really was. And he was about to find out. The reception was held at the Harbor Club, a venue overlooking Charleston Harbor that Dad had loved. He'd been a member for 30 years, and the staff had known him well. They'd set up the main dining room with tables draped in white linens, photos of Dad displayed on easels throughout the space, his favorite jazz music playing softly in the background. I moved through the reception like a ghost. People hugged me, pressed plates of food into my hands that I couldn't eat, told me I was so strong, so brave. But I wasn't strong. I was hollow, gutted by loss and betrayal in equal measure. Derek stayed close to Rebecca. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. They stood together near the bar, and I watched as he touched the small of her back, as she looked up at him with those adoring eyes. Some of Dad's friends noticed. I saw the whispers, the sideways glances, the uncomfortable shifting. If you've ever been betrayed, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. It's not just the pain, it's the humiliation. It's realizing that everyone can see your marriage falling apart, that they're watching you crumble, that you've become the object of pity. If that resonates with you, don't go anywhere. This gets so much worse before it gets better. And make sure to check the description box. There are more stories there about women who refuse to stay victims. Marcus found me standing alone by the windows, looking out at the water. The sun was setting, painting the harbor in shades of orange and gold that Dad would have loved. "You okay?" Marcus asked, though we both knew it was a stupid question. "Derek's leaving me," I said flatly. "He's in love with that woman over there. The one with the dark hair. Rebecca." Marcus followed my gaze. His jaw tightened. "Today. He's doing this today." Apparently today felt like the right time to announce it to his family. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I can throw him out." "No." I put my hand on Marcus's arm. "Don't. Just trust me. Please." Marcus studied my face. He was only 2 years younger than me, but he'd always been protective, especially after Mom died. "What are you planning?" I pulled a small USB drive from my clutch purse. It was black and unremarkable, the kind you could buy at any office supply store. But what was on it would change everything. "I need you to make sure Derek and Rebecca see this before they leave," I said, handing Marcus the drive. "What's on it?" "The truth." Marcus looked uncertain, but he knew better than to argue with me when I had that look in my eyes. It was the same look Dad used to get when he'd made a decision and nothing would change his mind. I watched as Marcus approached Derek and Rebecca. They were laughing about something, drinks in hand, looking like a couple celebrating instead of two people at a funeral. The rage that had been simmering inside me all day threatened to boil over, but I pushed it down. "Not yet." Marcus extended his hand with the USB drive. "Derek, Claire wanted me to give you this. She said you'd want to see what's on it." Derek frowned, taking the drive. "What is it?" "I don't know, man. She just said it's important. There's a laptop set up in the study if you want to check it now." Rebecca looked nervous. "Good. It's probably just photos or something," Derek said dismissively. But I saw him glance at me across the room, saw the flicker of uncertainty cross his face. They made their way to the study, a small room off the main dining area that the club used for private meetings. I waited exactly 3 minutes, then followed. The study door was ajar. I could hear the laptop whirring, the click of the mouse, and then silence. Then Rebecca's voice, high and panicked. "Oh my God. Oh my God. Derek, how does she—" "Shut up," Derek hissed. "Just shut up and let me think." I pushed the door open. They both spun around, their faces drained of color. The laptop screen glowed between them, frozen on an image I knew well because I'd spent 3 weeks staring at images just like it. "Surprised?" I asked, stepping into the room and closing the door behind me. On the screen was a bank statement. But not just any bank statement. This was from an account Derek had opened 2 years ago without telling me. An account where he'd been funneling money from our joint savings, from the business account, even from the college fund we'd set up for our niece, Marcus's daughter Emma. Derek had stolen over $200,000 from us. But that wasn't even the worst part. "Keep scrolling," I said, my voice eerily calm. Derek's hand shook as he clicked through the files. More bank statements. Emails between Derek and Rebecca planning their future together. A future funded by my money, by money he'd taken from my family. There were photos of them at restaurants, at hotels, at a beach house in Hilton Head that Derek had told me was a work retreat. And then came the real bombshell. Derek had used some of that stolen money to make a down payment on a house. A beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in Mount Pleasant, purchased in Rebecca's name to keep it hidden. They'd been planning to move in together for months. But the final file, the one that made Derek go completely white, was a letter. A letter from his employer's HR department, dated 2 weeks ago, informing him that he was under investigation for fraud. Someone had reported suspicious financial activity in his department, expense reports for trips that never happened, vendor invoices that didn't match up, money disappearing into places it shouldn't go. That someone was me. I'd sent the anonymous tip after I'd discovered what Derek was doing. I'd spent 3 weeks gathering evidence, documenting everything, building an airtight case. And I'd waited. I'd waited because I wanted to see if Derek would come clean, if he'd show even a shred of remorse, if the man I'd married was still in there somewhere. But at my father's funeral, he'd show me exactly who he was. "How did you—" Derek started, but his voice broke. "How did I find out?" I finished for him. It was actually an accident. I was looking for our tax documents in your office, and I found a folder labeled RLS Properties. Curious name. So I opened it. Rebecca was crying now, mascara running down her face. Claire, please, it's not. Not what you think. I interrupted. Not what it looks like. Let me tell you what it looks like, Rebecca. It looks like you and my husband have been having an affair for at least 18 months. It looks like Derek has been stealing from me and my family to fund your relationship. It looks like you two bought a house together while he was still sleeping in my bed every night. Does that about sum it up? She couldn't meet my eyes. Derek was getting angry. I could see it in the set of his jaw, the way his hands curled into fists. He'd been caught, and instead of apologizing, instead of begging for forgiveness, he was getting defensive. You had no right to go through my things, he said. I actually laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound that didn't feel like it came from me. I had no right. You stole from me, Derek. You committed fraud at your company. You destroyed our marriage. And you have the audacity to talk to me about rights. What do you want? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. You want to humiliate me? Ruin me? I don't want anything from you anymore, I said. And I meant it. But your employer does. And so does the IRS, because I also sent them copies of your little offshore account. The one in the Cayman Islands where you were hiding money to avoid taxes. Derek's face went from white to red. You bitch! No, I said softly. I'm the woman you underestimated. Rebecca grabbed Derek's arm. We need to leave. We need to get a lawyer. Go ahead, I told them. Leave. But know this. Every person in that dining room is going to find out what you did. Not from me. I don't need to say a word. Your brother knows. My brother knows. And you know how news travels in Charleston. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know that Derek Donovan is a thief and a fraud. Your clients, your colleagues, your mother at St. Michael's Church who's so proud of her successful son. I pulled out my phone and showed them another photo, one I'd taken just an hour ago. It was a screenshot of an email I'd sent to Derek's entire office directory, including the CEO. The email contained a summary of the evidence I'd gathered, along with links to the cloud folder where I'd stored everything. That's scheduled to send in 2 hours, I said. Unless you do exactly what I tell you. Derek's eyes were wild now. What do you want? I want you to stand up in front of everyone out there, all of Dad's friends, all of your family, and tell them the truth. Tell them you're a thief. Tell them you've been cheating. Tell them you've destroyed our marriage and stolen from my family. And then I want you to leave and never contact me again. Rebecca was sobbing. You can't do this. Watch me. What I didn't tell them was that it didn't matter whether Derek confessed or not. The email was going to send anyway. The IRS investigation was already underway. His employer had already been notified. I'd made sure that 3 days ago. But I wanted to see if Derek had even a shred of decency left. I wanted to give him the chance to own what he'd done, to face the consequences like a man. He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the war playing out behind his eyes. Then, slowly he stood up. You're insane, he said. I'm not doing this. And he ran. He grabbed Rebecca's hand, and they ran out of the study, through the dining room where everyone turned to stare, and out the main doors of the Harbor Club. Within minutes, I heard their car tires screeching in the parking lot. They were gone, and I was free. The morning after the funeral, I woke up in my childhood bedroom at Dad's house. I couldn't face going home, couldn't bear the thought of walking into the house I'd shared with Derek, so Marcus had driven me to Dad's place. It was strange being there without him. The house felt too quiet, too empty, but also comforting in a way I desperately needed. I made coffee in Dad's ancient percolator, the same one he'd used every morning for as long as I could remember. As I sat at his kitchen table, looking out at his small garden where tomatoes were still ripening on the vine, my phone started buzzing. Text after text. Call after call. Patricia, Claire, what on earth happened last night? Everyone's talking about Derek running out. Are you okay? Justin, Derek's brother Claire, I don't know what's going on, but Derek called me at 2 a.m. rambling about you destroying his life. Please call me Amanda, I'm so sorry, Claire. If I'd known what Derek was really like, And then, the one I'd been waiting for, an email from Derek's employer, Meridian Commercial Properties. The subject line read, regarding Derek Donovan, formal investigation initiated. I didn't need to open it to know what it said. Derek's career was over. The evidence I provided was damning, and once companies started investigating, they found more. They always did. Men like Derek were never as smart as they thought they were. But that wasn't the message that made me smile. That came 3 hours later from someone I'd been in contact with for the past 2 weeks, a divorce attorney named Patricia Nguyen, one of the best in Charleston. Asterisk Claire, I've received confirmation that Derek's accounts have been frozen pending investigation. Our petition for emergency asset protection has been granted. He can't touch anything. You're protected. Call me when you're ready to move forward. Patricia asterisk. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd planned during those long, sleepless nights after discovering Derek's betrayal, it was working. But here's the thing about revenge that nobody tells you. It doesn't feel the way you think it will. I'd imagined this moment would be triumphant. I'd pictured myself feeling powerful, vindicated, satisfied. Instead, I felt tired, sad, empty in a different way than the grief over Dad's death, but empty nonetheless. Marcus came by around noon with sandwiches from Dad's favorite deli. We ate in silence for a while, neither of us really tasting the food. Derek's been calling me, Marcus finally said. Left about 15 voicemails. He's falling apart, Claire. He says you've ruined him. He ruined himself, I said flatly. I know. But, Marcus hesitated. Are you okay with all this? With how it's happening? I thought about that question for a long time. Was I okay? Derek chose my father's funeral to announce he was leaving me, I said slowly. He chose the worst day of my life to make it about his freedom, his new love, his fresh start. He didn't just betray me, Marcus. He disrespected Dad. He disrespected all of us. He stole from us, from you, from Emma. That college fund he drained, that was supposed to be Emma's future. Marcus's jaw tightened. I didn't know he'd taken from Emma's fund $40,000 to furnish the house he bought with Rebecca. Jesus Christ. So no, I'm not entirely okay with how this is happening. But I'm okay with the fact that it's happening. Derek made his choices. These are the consequences. What I didn't tell Marcus was that I'd cried for 3 hours the night before. Not for Derek. I'd stopped crying for him weeks ago, but for the life I'd thought I had. For the future I'd imagined. For the person I'd been before I knew the truth. You don't get to unknow something like that. Once you see who someone really is, you can't go back to believing there's someone else. And that loss, the loss of the illusion, that's its own kind of grief. Over the next few days, the story spread through Charleston like wildfire. Our city was small enough that everyone knew someone who knew someone, and Derek's fall from grace became the talk of every church group, book club, and Sunday brunch. Some people reached out with support. Others disappeared, not wanting to be associated with scandal. That's when you learn who your real friends are. Not when everything's perfect, but when your life is a disaster and they show up anyway. Mrs. Pemberton, Dad's friend from the book club, came by with casseroles and fierce hugs. Your father would be proud of you, she said. He always said you were tougher than you knew. Captain Morrison offered to take me sailing. Nothing clears the head like the open water, he told me. When you're ready. And then there was Rebecca. She showed up at Dad's house on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the funeral. I saw her car pull up through the kitchen window, watched her sit there for 5 full minutes before she got the courage to get out. I opened the door before she could knock. She looked terrible. Her dark hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore sweatpants and an oversized sweater, no makeup. Her eyes were red and swollen. What do you want? I asked. To apologize, she said, her voice small. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I never meant. Never meant what? To get caught? To have your affair exposed? To lose your dream house? She flinched. I never meant to hurt you. I stared at her, this woman who'd been sleeping with my husband for 1.5 years, and I felt something unexpected. Pity. Do you want to know the saddest part, Rebecca? I asked. You didn't just help Derek destroy our marriage. You helped him destroy himself. He was so obsessed with impressing you, with building this fantasy life with you, that he committed fraud. He stole. He's probably going to jail. Her face crumpled. I know, and you're going to be okay, I continued. You'll lose the house, sure. You'll probably lose your job. But you're young. You'll recover. You'll move somewhere new, start over, meet someone else. But Derek, he's 45 years old. He threw away his entire life, his entire career, his reputation, his family, everything, for someone he barely knew. Rebecca was crying now. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It never is, I said. And then I closed the door. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't care. That night, I finally went home. My real home, the house Derek and I had bought 12 years ago in the historic district, the one with the wraparound porch and the magnolia tree in the front yard. It felt different now. Smaller somehow. Like it belonged to someone else's life. I walked through each room, turning on lights, looking at the photos on the walls, our wedding day, vacations, holidays with family. All those captured moments that I thought told the story of a happy marriage. They were lies. Beautiful, framed lies. I started taking them down. One by one, I removed every photo that had Derek in it, piling them in a box that I'd donate to charity or throw away. I didn't care which. When I got to our bedroom, I found something I'd forgotten about. A letter Dad had written me on my 30th birthday. He'd written one for both Marcus and me, letters we were supposed to open when we needed guidance. I'd kept mine in my nightstand drawer, never opened it because I'd never felt like I needed guidance badly enough. But I needed it now. I sat on the edge of the bed and carefully opened the envelope. Dad's familiar handwriting, the slight slant to his letters, made fresh tears spring to my eyes. My dearest Claire, asterisk if you're reading this, it means you're facing something difficult. I don't know what it is. Life has a way of throwing curves we can't predict, but I know you, and I know you're strong enough to handle it. Asterisk. Asterisk, the thing about strength is that it's not about never falling down. It's about getting back up. It's about knowing when to fight and when to let go. It's about understanding that not every battle is yours to win, and not every person is yours to save. Asterisk. Asterisk, whatever you're facing, remember this. You are your mother's daughter and mine. You have her compassion and my stubbornness. You have the courage to do hard things, even when they break your heart. Especially when they break your heart. Asterisk. Asterisk, don't let bitterness take root in you, sweetheart. Don't let whatever pain you're feeling now define who you become. Feel it, learn from it, and then choose to be better than the circumstances that brought you to this letter. Asterisk. Asterisk, you are loved. You are strong. And you are never, ever alone. Asterisk. All my love, Dad. I read that letter 3 times, crying harder with each reading. Dad had known. Somehow, even years ago, he'd known I'd need those words. And he was right. I was stronger than I thought. I had survived my mother's death. I'd survived discovering my husband's betrayal. I'd survived burying my father. I'd survive this too. But I'd survive it on my terms, as myself, not as the broken victim Derek probably expected me to be. 3 months after Dad's funeral, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. I'd cut my hair, 10 inches gone, replaced by a shoulder-length style that made me look younger, fiercer. I'd started running again, something I hadn't done since college. I'd lost weight not from grief, but from taking care of myself for the first time in years. I looked different. I felt different. I was different. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks prior. Derek hadn't contested anything because he couldn't. He was too busy dealing with criminal charges and mounting legal fees. The judge had awarded me the house, the car, and what was left of our savings after Derek's theft. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Derek had been arrested in late November, charged with embezzlement, fraud, and tax evasion. His lawyer tried to work out a plea deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. My evidence. The trial was set for February, and I'd been called as a witness. I wasn't looking forward to it, but I wasn't dreading it either. I'd tell the truth, answer the questions, and move on with my life. Rebecca had disappeared. Last I heard, she'd moved to Atlanta, trying to start over. Good for her. I meant that sincerely. But here's what happened that made this whole story worth telling, the part that still gives me chills when I think about it. In early December, I received a phone call from an attorney I didn't know. His name was Charles Whitmore, and he was the executor of Dad's estate. "Miss Donovan," he said, "I apologize for the delay in contacting you. Your father's will was quite specific about certain elements needing to be kept private until after other matters were settled. I had no idea what he was talking about. What matters? Your divorce," he said. Your father included a clause in his will that certain assets were to be held in trust until you were legally separated from Derek Donovan. I sat down heavily. What? Mr. Whitmore explained that Dad had updated his will 8 months before he died. In it, he'd left Marcus the house in Charleston and a substantial portion of his savings. But for me, Dad had done something different. He'd left me his investment portfolio. I'd known Dad had investments. He'd been smart with money, had always lived modestly, but I'd assumed it was a small nest egg, maybe $50,000 or $60,000. It was $1.3 million. Dad had been quietly investing for decades, building wealth that he'd never touched, never spent, saving it for us, for his children, and he'd been smart enough to protect it, to make sure Derek could never get his hands on it. He knew. I whispered into the phone. He knew Derek wasn't who he said he was. I believe your father had concerns, Mr. Whitmore said carefully. He came to me last May and asked how to protect you in the event of a divorce. He didn't say why he thought you might need protection, but he was very adamant about the trust clause. May. That was 3 months before I discovered Derek's affair, 5 months before Dad died. Dad had known something was wrong. He'd seen it before I did, and he'd done what he always did. He protected me. I cried on the phone with a stranger, this attorney, who was kind enough to wait until I pulled myself together. There's one more thing, Mr. Whitmore said. Your father left you a video message. He recorded it when he updated the will. I'm sending you a private link now. The video arrived in my email minutes later. I sat alone in Dad's study, my study now, in the house I'd inherited, and clicked play. Dad appeared on screen, sitting in this very room, wearing his favorite cardigan. He looked healthy, happy, completely himself. Hi, sweetheart, he said, and I lost it again. His voice. God, I'd missed his voice. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and I'm sorry for that. I wanted more time with you, with Marcus, with Emma. I wanted to meet my grandchildren if you ever decided to have them. But life doesn't always give us the time we want. I'm recording this because I need you to understand something. Over the past few months, I've noticed changes in you. You're sad in a way that has nothing to do with missing your mother. You're quiet. You apologize too much. And Derek looks at you sometimes like you're in his way. I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But if I'm not, if Derek turns out to be the kind of man who makes you feel small, who takes from you, who doesn't appreciate the incredible woman you are, then I want you to know you're going to be okay. The money I'm leaving you isn't just money, Claire. It's freedom. It's options. It's the ability to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you, to build the life you deserve without having to worry about how you'll survive. You are so much stronger than you think you are. You've survived loss before. You've survived pain. And if you're watching this, then you've survived whatever brought you to this video. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. Your mother would be too. Live well, sweetheart. Live freely. Live boldly. Don't settle for anything less than joy. I love you. Always. The video ended, and I sat in the silence of that study for a long time, feeling Dad's presence so strongly it was like he was sitting right there beside me. He'd known I'd need saving, and he'd saved me, not with lectures or interventions or confrontations with Derek, but with quiet protection, with love so deep it reached beyond death. I used some of Dad's money to start a foundation, the William Hartford Foundation for Women's Financial Independence. We offer free financial literacy classes, help women set up private accounts their partners can access, provide legal aid for women trying to escape financially controlling relationships. Because that's what Derek had been doing all along. Not just stealing money, but controlling me through it, making me dependent, keeping me small. I hired 3 staff members, all women who'd been through similar experiences. We rented a small office space downtown, and within 6 months, we'd helped over 200 women in the Charleston area. The work gave me purpose. It gave meaning to everything I'd been through. Derek's trial came in February, just as planned. I testified for 45 minutes, walking the jury through bank statements, emails, and the systematic theft that had defined the last 2 years of our marriage. Derek looked terrible. He'd aged a decade in 3 months. His expensive suit hung on him like he'd borrowed it from someone larger. When our eyes met across the courtroom, I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no residual love. Just nothing. He was convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in federal prison, with possible early release after 4 if he behaved himself. His mother cornered me outside the courthouse, mascara running, desperate. "Please, Claire. Tell them you forgive him. Tell them he's a good man who made mistakes. The sentence is too harsh. Your son stole $200,000 from me and my family," I said not unkindly. "He committed fraud at his workplace. He evaded taxes. He cheated on me for over a year. These aren't mistakes, Mrs. Donovan. These are choices. This is who Derek chose to be." She slapped me, right there on the courthouse steps, in front of lawyers and reporters and strangers. She slapped me hard enough to make my ears ring. Security intervened immediately, pulling her away. She was screaming, calling me horrible names, blaming me for destroying her son's life. I stood there with my hand on my burning cheek, watching this woman I'd once called family completely unravel, and I felt a strange sense of closure. This was it. This was the end of that chapter of my life. I pressed charges for the assault, not because I was vindictive, but because I was done being the kind of woman who let people hurt her without consequences. Mrs. Donovan received a fine and a restraining order. We never spoke again. 1 year after Dad's funeral, Marcus and I held a memorial service at St. Michael's Church. Not a sad affair, but a celebration of who Dad had been, his laughter, his wisdom, his terrible jokes, his unconditional love. We invited everyone who'd known him. The church was packed. Pastor Mitchell spoke about Dad's faith and service. Captain Morrison told sailing stories that had everyone laughing. Mrs. Pemberton read from Hemingway, Dad's favorite author. Emma, Marcus's daughter, played violin, a piece she'd learned specifically for her grandfather. And I spoke. Finally, I found the words I couldn't say at his funeral. "My father taught me that strength isn't about never falling down," I said, looking out at the sea of familiar faces. "It's about getting back up. It's about knowing when to fight and when to let go. It's about choosing, every single day, to be better than your circumstances." A year ago, I lost my father on the same day I lost my marriage. I thought I'd lost everything. But Dad, he made sure I'd be okay. He protected me even after he was gone. He gave me not just financial security, but the reminder that I was strong enough to survive anything. And he was right. I did survive. Not just survive, I've built something meaningful from the ashes of what was destroyed. I've helped other women find their strength, their freedom, their voices. Dad always said that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, and it's an action. And every day, through the work I do with the foundation, I'm choosing to love the way he loved me. Unconditionally, protectively, with the belief that people deserve better than what they've been given. So this isn't goodbye, Dad. This is thank you. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for believing in me when I'd stopped believing. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like, not the pretty words and empty promises I got from Derek, but the quiet, fierce, unwavering protection that reaches beyond death. I miss you every single day, but I carry you with me in everything I do. And I promise to live the way you taught me, boldly, freely, with joy. I love you, Dad. Always. There wasn't a dry eye in that church. But they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of love, of gratitude, of celebration for a man who'd left the world better than he'd found it. After the service, people lingered for hours, sharing food and stories and laughter. It was exactly what Dad would have wanted. 2 years after everything fell apart, I was sitting on my front porch with a glass of wine, watching the sun set over Charleston, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Claire Donovan," a woman's voice asked. "Yes. My name is Jennifer Mason. I saw an article about your foundation, about what you do for women trying to leave controlling relationships. How can I help you, Jennifer?" There was a long pause. Then, "My husband controls all our money. I don't even have access to our bank accounts. I found out he's been having an affair, and when I confronted him, he told me that if I leave, I'll lose everything. The house, my car, any financial security. He said no lawyer would help me, that I'd end up with nothing." My heart broke for this woman I'd never met, because I knew exactly how she felt. I'd been her. "Jennifer," I said firmly, "your husband is wrong. You have options. You have rights. And you're not going to lose everything. In fact, I'm going to make sure you don't lose anything you're entitled to. She started crying. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. You just need to trust yourself enough to take the first step. And then the next one. And then the next. That's how you get through this, one step at a time. We talked for an hour. By the end of the call, Jennifer had an appointment with Patricia Nguyen, my divorce attorney. She had a plan for documenting her husband's financial control. She had resources, support, and most importantly, hope. After we hung up, I sat on that porch for a long time, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. If someone had told me 3 years ago that I'd lose my father and my marriage within hours of each other, that my husband would betray me in the cruelest way possible, that I'd end up divorced and completely rebuilding my life, I would have thought it would destroy me. But it didn't destroy me. It transformed me. I learned that sometimes the worst things that happen to you become the catalysts for the best things you'll ever do. That pain, when you channel it into purpose, becomes power. That the end of one story is just the beginning of another. Derek taught me what love isn't. It isn't control, possession, deception, or betrayal. And Dad taught me what love is. It's protection, empowerment, belief, and sacrifice. I chose to build my new life on Dad's definition, not Derek's. Last month, I went on my first date since the divorce. His name is Nathan, he's a maritime lawyer, and we met through Captain Morrison. He's kind, funny, transparent about his past, and respectful of mine. I'm not rushing into anything. I'm taking my time, rediscovering who I am as a single woman, enjoying my independence. But it's nice to know that when I'm ready, there are good men out there. Men who know how to love without controlling. Men who see strength in a partner instead of feeling threatened by it. The foundation is thriving. We've expanded to 3 cities in South Carolina, and we're planning to go statewide next year. We've helped over 800 women in 2 years. 800 women who are building new lives, finding their strength, refusing to be victims. Every single one of them reminds me why I survived. Why I fought back. Why I didn't let Derek's betrayal and Dad's death break me. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled things with Derek. If I think I went too far with the revenge. If I should have just quietly divorced him without exposing everything. And my answer is always the same, no. Derek didn't just betray me. He disrespected my father's memory. He stole from my family. He committed crimes. He made those choices knowing the potential consequences, and he thought he'd get away with it because I was too naive, too trusting, too weak to stop him. He was wrong about me, and he paid the price for that miscalculation. But here's the thing I want you to understand, especially if you're watching this and you're in a situation like I was. Revenge isn't about making someone else suffer. It's about refusing to let them make you suffer in silence. It's about standing up and saying, no more. You don't get to do this to me without consequences. You don't get to destroy my life and walk away unscathed. It's about reclaiming your power, your dignity, your sense of justice in a world that often protects the wrong people. Would I prefer that Derek had been a good man? That he'd loved me faithfully? That we'd grown old together? That my father's funeral had been about honoring Dad instead of exposing my husband's betrayal? Of course. But that's not the story I got. And I had to decide what to do with the story I did get. I chose to fight back. I chose to protect myself. I chose to turn my pain into purpose. And I have never once regretted that choice. As I finish telling you this story, I'm sitting in Dad's study, my study, surrounded by photos of the women we've helped through the foundation. These faces represent second chances, new beginnings, lives reclaimed from the grip of controlling partners. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you're living with someone who makes you feel small, who controls your money, who betrays your trust, please know this: you are stronger than you think. You have more options than you believe, and you deserve better than what you're getting. Dad was right. Strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up. It's about knowing when to fight and when to let go. It's about choosing to be better than your circumstances. I fell down hard, but I got back up, and I built something beautiful from the rubble of what was destroyed. You can too. Don't let anyone make you feel like you have to accept betrayal, abuse, or control because you don't have choices. You always have choices. They might be hard choices. They might be scary choices, but they exist. And when you make the choice to save yourself, to fight for yourself, to believe in yourself, that's when everything changes. That's when you stop being a victim and become a survivor. That's when you stop mourning what was lost and start building what could be. That's when you discover that the woman you become after everything falls apart is stronger, fiercer, and more authentic than the woman you were before. I miss my father every day, but I carry him with me in the work I do, in the choices I make, in the way I love and protect the people who matter to me. And I don't miss Derek at all. That tells you everything you need to know about which relationship was real and which was a beautiful lie I told myself for too long. If this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or courage, or just made you feel less alone, please check the description box below. There are more stories there about women who refused to stay victims, who fought back, who rebuilt their lives from nothing. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because somewhere out there, there's a woman standing at my father's funeral, hearing her husband plan his escape, feeling like her world is ending. And I want her to know, your world isn't ending. It's just beginning. The best revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation. It's becoming someone so strong, so whole, so undeniably yourself that the person who tried to break you becomes nothing more than a footnote in your story. That's what I did. That's what you can do too. Thank you for listening. Thank you for witnessing my story. And thank you, Dad, wherever you are, for teaching me that love is the quiet act of making sure someone's okay long after you're gone. I'm okay, Dad. More than okay. I'm free. If you made it this far, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and check the description box for more incredible stories of survival, revenge, and transformation. You're not alone. You're never alone.